The RG300. This thing is the king of retro gaming on a budget. It's completely confusing, yet perfectly sensible. Its software is cheap, but it feels more expensive with every minute you spend customizing or replacing it. Its screen is downright excellent. Its build quality is almost suspiciously good. Its button layout is logical, comfortable, and very tight. I mean, listen to these. So first, let me explain what this thing is and how it works. It has a 3-inch IPS display that they say is 960 by 480, but whatever it may be, it has excellent brightness, color, and response time. Inside this beast, we have a dual-core 600 MHz, unlocked and overclockable processor, 128 MB of RAM, 16 GB of internal storage, an external micro SD card slot, a combo headphone and AV out jack, USB-C, and an 1800 mAh battery. This Game Boy Advance also has an IPS display, but just look at the difference in color and smoothness. Let's take it a step further and compare it with this original DMG Game Boy. Man, if this is not the perfect spiritual successor to that original Game Boy, I don't know what is. Now let's actually get this thing in the hand and take a look at the outside, then we'll get it booted up and see how it runs some pretty taxing emulators. Now, working our way around the device here, we've got our USB-C and our combo AV and headphone jack on the bottom. We've got our micro SD card slot and our power switch up above that. Then we have our super comfortable, awesome shoulder switches, followed by the battery, which is removable and rechargeable, bringing us back to the volume wheel. Now I want to jump right into PlayStation emulation and take a good look at scaling and frame rate on a few different games. I'm going to start off here with Final Fantasy IX because it came out pretty late in the PlayStation 1's lifespan and it has some pretty astounding visuals for the time. Now you can see this is running at 320 by 240 right now, which is one of the reasons why I think the screen is actually either 320 by 240 or maybe 640 by 480, because when you're running this and you look at it, it looks pixel perfect. It doesn't look out of aspect or anything. I mean, really, just take a look at this playback. It doesn't look stretched or anything. It looks pixel perfect. And really, Final Fantasy IX plays astonishingly well. I've had no issues with audio cutting or clipping or anything, or any graphical anomalies at all. Now, Croc and a lot of other 3D platformers are a little bit of a different story. So for Croc to run good enough to actually want to pick up and play, you do have to turn automatic frame skip on. Now it's probably running at about 30 FPS, so it's definitely playable. It's just not super buttery smooth like Final Fantasy IX is going to play back. But again, the fidelity of that screen just makes these PlayStation games pop. Okay. So as you can see, it's playing just fine. I wouldn't say stuttering, it's just skipping a couple of frames. But as far as like control, it's perfect. Definitely playable. Okay, now let's switch to Medieval. This is one of my favorite PlayStation games. This one's also a little bit taxing. There's a lot of voiceover. There's a lot of 3D animation. There's a lot of FMVs. But this is another game that it plays back basically excellently. If you turn frame skip all the way off, I think it's running just a hair under full speed. But if you turn frame skip on to just 1, then you don't really notice that much difference, and it plays again, almost perfectly. Really, the audio is what I'm surprised with the most on this little handheld. When you put some headphones in or use the TV out, the PlayStation audio is literally perfect. Now let's change gears here and switch to Sega CD. Now the Sega CD emulator will give you a little bit of trouble at first because you're going to have to find a Sega CD BIOS and go and put it in the appropriate folder. But I'm going to make a complete video series out of this, and in our next video I'll show you how you can update the firmware and how to fix certain problems, including no BIOS for the Sega CD emulator. But anyway, the Sega CD emulation is perfect all the time. I bumped my processor up to, I think, 650-ish megahertz, and which is the same I use for PlayStation also. And emulation is perfect. Audio is perfect. And again, the screen, I think, is 320 by 240 because this is the sharpest I've ever seen PlayStation 1 or Sega CD. It really does look insanely sharp when you're actually playing it on the handheld and not using the TV out. Now, real quickly, I'm going to try and touch base on basically all the consoles that this little thing can run. So we've got NES, Super Nintendo, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Sega Master System, Sega Genesis, Sega CD, and Sega 32X, Sega Game Gear, Neo Geo, Neo Geo CD, Neo Geo Pocket and Pocket Color.
I'm tired.
Atari 2600, 5200, 7800, Atari Lynx, Atari 800, Commodore 64, MSX, MS-DOS, Intellivision, ColecoVision, Multiple Arcade Machine Emulator, ZX Spectrum, PC Engine and CD / TurboGrafx 16 and CD, Vectrex, Amiga CPC, Pokemon Mini, WonderSwan and freaking WonderSwan Color, and the motherfucking PlayStation 1! Woo! Yes! Okay. So why is the RG300 the budget king? It hits every sweet spot. It's $65 right above the Bit Boys and right below the RG350 and the Powkiddy 3D Pandora. It has the best screen. It can play the PlayStation games almost as good as the consoles that cost twice as much. It has better ergonomics than the Bit Boys that cost a little bit less but do most of the same things. It has way better ergonomics than the RG350 or the Powkiddy, considering that this is for retro games first and foremost. But that's it for now. Remember to subscribe and stay tuned. In our next video, we're going to be going over how to flash new firmware onto this device and how to add additional emulators and ROMs. Thanks for watching.